I want to take it back to something that Nicole said, and Valaida, I know you and I've heard you speak about this, ad nauseum. But talk about, because we want to frame and shape, Black philanthropy, Black giving, and the context that Black folk have been doing this for years and decades and not really calling it philanthropy. But, whether it was, helping send a young person off to college for the first time, whether it's tithe and donation at the church, there's something that's baked into, our DNA that philanthropy has always been there without that terminology. So can you just kind of talk about that in this context and the root of how Black folk have been doing this for years?
Right. Just in the last half century or so, greater recognition in Black communities about our traditions of giving and how philanthropy is framed in our community, which is a reminder to everybody that philanthropy is deeper than your pockets. Mm-hmm. And we have always been philanthropists. And so we find that not only do people outside the Black community need to be informed and educated about those traditions and that fact, but also our own community, Black people, new generation, older generations need to be reminded of that fact and to embrace those traditions. We have access to more spaces and to greater wealth these days than our ancestors and elders generations before. And there's so much we can do if we really tap into the power of our giving traditions and the fact that our philanthropy is certainly framed around the core definition of philanthropy, which is love of humanity, mm-hmm. love of what it means to be human, and not framed solely around how many zeros are behind the dollar sign. Right. So I often say our giving is, yes, time, talent, and treasure, mm-hmm. but we also supersize it and bring in additional T's, being our testimonies, our truth that we bring to community and to shape and change communities, and our ties to the community and our proximity to neighborhoods and issues and concerns among Black people. So we have that to bring, and I think more of us should embrace that and embody that in our giving. And August, being Black Philanthropy Month, is a time to celebrate that and acknowledge it and spread the word.
So Nicole, with that being said, can you kind of tie that into community-based philanthropy? Because I know that's one of your specialties. And again, how was it that, for a long time, it feels as though a long time, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of Black voices get lost in the philanthropic movement, and now that it's coming forward, again, we've always been doing it. And so what is that community-based philosophy, community-based philanthropy? What does that all encompass?
Yeah, and here I again give nod to those who came before, because here's where I humbly got to step into telling a story. I think a really important story that hadn't necessarily been woven together yet, and one that intersects with the Ford Foundation, interestingly. So it's, in Ford, our philosophy, right, is, we're constantly thinking about and investing in people, ideas, institutions, are thinking about ways to disrupt inequality. And those are leaders like James Baldwin, Gloria Steinem, I-Jen Poo, but also, getting to the ideas part of it, ideas like this idea of sort of giving circles, or as you were sort of framing, sort of a second ago, community-led philanthropic organizations. And so as I'm getting introductions to sort of folks in Charlotte, including Valaida, she starts to pull together this story for me that just gets goosebumps to this day, because origins of work where she became inspired around giving circles and work that she's done with NGAP Charlotte also began years and years prior with seeds that a senior program officer at Ford, was planting early on, Lynetta Gilbert being her name specifically. And she was leaning into everything that Valaida had just said, like sort of Black giving is in our DNA at the church level, supporting each other consistently. And, and that goes to stats as well, like Black donors constantly, like giving some of the highest percentage of their income consistently. And so in that spirit of, sort of giving that's rooted in family, rooted in community, taking care of each other, not being transactional, that was an idea that Lynetta really started to lean into as she started planting bets, planting seeds, over $1 billion of investment over her career in this whole idea of community-led philanthropic organizations. That led to, not just as Valaida was pointing out, the giving of sort of wealth, but how do you create networks that can create true influence in tapping into their talents, tapping into their connections or positions of power, and utilizing that to actually make effective change within your community. And Valaida, I think you tell the story way better than I. So I'd love to toss to you for just the origins of those first two chapters that Lynetta really inspired with NGAP Raleigh and NGAP actually the BCF, Birmingham Change Fund in Alabama, because that to me was just the perfect weaving together of a group of people who come together with a mission, in this case education, and then I won't spoil it for you, Valaida can tell you, but the ripple effect that came from this group coming together and what they were able to form, that is the spirit of community-led philanthropic, sort of organizations that Ford planted seeds for, and now has just blossomed in ways that is exciting to see in these years come after.
Yeah, picking up on that story. In fact, I see how a global institution like Ford, a $13 billion philanthropic institution with a Black president, by the way, who, from my perspective, is through his upbringing and traditions and relationship with Black communities, I see that more of our giving is valued in ways that we give and possibilities for our institutions through his leadership. In any case, the fact that an institution like Ford, through Lynetta's work, helped start a movement with Black giving circles across the South and across the country, and then now how our local work is also cascading up or trickling up and having global impact. So that's also excited to see the full circle nature of it all. But back in the early 2000s, Lynetta Gilbert was a program officer at Ford, and in her work, she had previously worked at a community foundation and had seen the gap that exists between community foundations and other philanthropic institutions that are oftentimes bastions of white wealth and privilege and are disconnected from Black donors and Black communities. And so she found giving circles, building on a tradition in Afro-descendant communities, saw value in creating Black giving circles to bridge that gap. At the same time, she saw how philanthropic institutions were operating. There was also the remigration of Black people to the South and a growing number of young Black professionals in southern cities that had resources, disposable income, concerns for the community, relationships in community. And so she invested in the creation of Black giving circles. And I was on the board of a organization, the African American Community Foundation here in Charlotte, and heard one of her consultants, Daryl Lester, speak about these Black giving circles across the South, and I was intrigued and like, I want to be a part of that. I want to see that happen here in Charlotte.